Number 1, printed in Part C of House Report Number 115-235, offered by Ms. Tsongas of Massachusetts.
Pursuant to House Resolution 454, the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Tsongas, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is very straightforward. It restores a bipartisan provision to the bill, one that was actually approved by Congress and signed into law by President Obama. In 2009, Congress approved the King Cove Land Exchange under the condition that it be found to be in the national interest by the Secretary of the Interior. After a transparent 4-year review that included over 70,000 public comments and 130 public meetings, Secretary Jewell ultimately concluded that it was not in the national interest and the land exchange was not approved. Nevertheless, the legislation that was approved and signed into law in 2009 with Democratic and Republican support included language that, should the road be approved, would have required the state of Alaska, federal agencies, and local residents to develop a mitigation plan for the road so that impacts to migratory birds, wildlife, and wetlands are minimized. The land exchange language that was passed by Congress in 2009 is similar to the legislation that we are considering today, with a few notable exceptions, including the removal of the section requiring this environmental mitigation plan. It is common practice for any new road construction project to include an environmental mitigation plan, especially a road through such a sensitive area. I urge adoption of my common sense amendment to reinsert this bipartisan language, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alaska seek
Rise in
recognition?
opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, this is an amendment is mischievous and trying to defeat what we're trying to do today. The amendment is wholly unnecessary to mitigate impacts on migratory birds in Eisenbeck Refuge. Again, this single lane, non-commercial, 11 miles, has no effect upon the wildlife, the waterfowl, or any kind. It would allow, again, the secretaries or one of the other secretaries of a lesser part, like Fish and Wildlife, to delay the project. It's an effort, again, to delay the project. We didn't expect, and by the way, when we say there's 70,000 or more public comments, there was less than 100 from Alaska. These are outside comments. This whole idea of public comment sometimes doesn't make sense when they're nowhere near the Eisenbeck Refuge or this road. Sometimes I think we get caught in this idea that, we got all these public comments against something or for something. Let's look at where they're from. This amendment, again, as I say, is mischievous. It's trying to kill the project. Should not be done. It's being pushed by the environmental community, again, to kill this project. As I mentioned in my opening statement, you probably got some phone calls. Frankly, they don't know what they're talking about. So I urge my colleagues to vote against this amendment, and attempt again to stop this road. Let's build this road for the people of King Cove. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentlewoman from Massachusetts recognized.
I think it's important to keep in mind that the lands that this road seeks to cross are federally protected public lands. They are managed and protected on behalf of all Americans to specifically protect wildlife habitat. And as such, when changes like this are being debated, all Americans have the right to register their opinion. They are also designated wilderness, the highest level of protection that the American people can bestow upon a piece of public land. And we in Congress are stewards of that mandate. The road proposed by this legislation could do irreparable harm to the fragile environment of this wildlife refuge if mitigation steps are not taken. As the Department of the Interior stated in 2013, this area is, quote, a globally significant landscape that supports an abundance and diversity of wildlife unique to the refuge that years of analysis shows us would be irretrievably damaged by construction and operation of the proposed road, unquote. The department also found that construction of the road would lead to, quote, significant degradation of irreparable ecological resources that would not be offset by the protection of other lands to be received under an exchange, unquote. My amendment simply reinserts bipartisan language that was approved by Congress and signed into law by 2009 that will help mitigate some, but not all, of the negative environmental impacts in the event that the road is constructed. Thank you, and I continue to reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves.
I asked unanimous consent to retrieve my time. I made a mistake and said a yield. I should have said reserve.
Is there an objection? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for doing and ladies allowing me to speak on this. Again, let me stress the fact that this land, the federal government is going to receive 43,000 acres for additional wilderness for 240 acres. I mean, I don't know how many deals you ever worked that you get that kind of deal. This is a great thing for the refuge. It's the right thing for the refuge. And again, we go about this bipartisan legislation. We expected in 2009 to have this road built. That's why we're back here. It's not the first time. 40 years this community has been trying to get this road built. And we thought we had it in 2009, and because of the administrations that were unfavorable to it, and the slowness of the report of the Fish and Wildlife, and then having the Secretary of Interior, Sally Jewell, say, no, there's other alternatives when they did not work. So I'm suggesting respectfully that, again, this amendment is trying to kill the bill. It's not trying to do and solve a solution. So respectfully, I'd say this again, vote against this amendment. Let's defeat this amendment. And I yield to the chairman. I reserve. I reserve.
Okay.
I continue to reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Utah. The gentleman from Alaska is
I
recognized.
yield, my chairman.
The gentleman from Utah is recognized.
Can I just inquire before we start, and how much time is left, and are there other speakers on this amendment?
It has 2.5 minutes.
I have no other speakers, but I continue to reserve.
The gentlelady from Massachusetts has 2 minutes.
Let me yield back to Mr. Young, and we'll continue to reserve until you're ready to close.
Reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Massachusetts recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to first remind my distinguished colleague from Alaska, who I know cares very deeply about his constituents, that in 2009 he did vote for the omnibus land package that included the language that I today would like to see become part of the legislation before us today. Mr. Chairman, my amendment is simple. It restores bipartisan language that was passed by Congress and that Congressman Young supported and signed into law on similar legislation authorizing this land exchange back in 2009. The road through Isenbeck National Wildlife Refuge is expected to have a significant detrimental impact on lands that are protected for the benefit of all Americans. This amendment will help mitigate some, but not all of those impacts in the event that the road is constructed. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields. The gentleman from Alaska
I
is
yield
recognized.
1 minute to the chairman.
The gentleman from Utah is recognized.
And I can say I don't support this because even though I had 3 bills in that package, I voted against it. It was a bad package going through. But the problem is that this amendment does nothing more than reinstate the language that caused the problem in the first place. This language is the reason that we don't have the solution right now. And remember, the solution was no action, not to do anything whatsoever. I understand there sometimes we have distance issues that come here. The gentlelady from Massachusetts has not an inch of BLM land in your entire state. Only 3% of the land is controlled by the federal government, which is much different than having 90% controlled by the federal government, as in Alaska. I would contend that if there was any other area in the nation, especially in the eastern part of the nation, that had a situation like this, they would not tolerate this existing. And they also had the ability of actually solving the problem on the local level, which is what they are asking in this bill to simply do. Look, these people, 80% of them, are native Alaskans. They don't have the lung power to come up here and express them for themselves. They don't have the resources to hire special interest groups to come and express for themselves. They're depending on us to do it for them. I will yield back the remainder of my time, if I had any, back to Mr. Young.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, how much time we have left?
The gentleman has 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Again, may I suggest we talk about this legislation. We thought 9 years ago or 8 years ago that we'd have this road built. There's no federal money involved in it. It is a road that needs to be done. And if we reinstate this language, what will happen, there will be a time where the road again will be studied and won't be built. 40 years. 40 years they've waited, lost lives. And we're talking about letting the federal government get involved again. I'm saying this is the time to build a road, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Massachusetts. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Massachusetts will be postponed. It's now in order to consider Amendment Number 2, printed in Part C of House Report 115-235. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alaska seek recognition?
I have an amendment to this, Mr. Chairman.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 2, printed in Part C of House Report number 115-235, offered by Mr. Young of Alaska.
Pursuant to House Resolution 454, the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Young, and a member opposed will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Alaska.
Mr. Chairman, my amendment is in order to fully ensure that this emergency route will not be slowed down by unnecessary regulatory delays. This amendment makes minor changes to Section 7 to conform to the text of H.R. 218 with the Senate text S-101. Section 7 of the underlying bill waives the NEPA process because the NEPA process has already been completed in 2014 under Secretary Jewell. Environmental impact statement has already been published. Secretary Jewell ignored the public and health safety aspects, killed people because we don't have a road. There's no reason to make the people of King Cove go through the time-consuming, expensive process again when it was done so recently. The people of King Cove have fought for this road for 40 years. People have literally died again because of the lack of this road to Coal Bay that has a 6,000-foot airstrip. Again, I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and reserve.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I claim time in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very much. I rise in opposition to this amendment. While it was described as a technical amendment to conform the bill to the Senate version, it does much more than make a simple technical correction. Mr. Young's amendment expands the NEPA waiver in the underlying bill to exempt all permits associated with the construction of the proposed road from environmental review and public input. It's bad enough that the bill waives NEPA for the land exchange, but under this amendment, any and all permits would be exempt from review. This could include a Clean Water Act permit necessary to move forward with the construction. This amendment makes the bill worse, and I urge a no vote. And I yield back the remainder of our time.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Alaska is
Again,
recognized.
Mr. Chairman, let's not wait again for 40 years or 9 years or 10 years. This has already been done by the study. The impact statement's been already done. The NEPA process has already been done. It's been done recently, and this is not a cheap effort for a small community. So I'm suggesting respectfully this amendment should be adopted so we can build a road, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Alaska. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 3, printed in Part C of House Report 115-235. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment made in order under the rule.
Clerk
At the
will
desk.
designate the amendment.
Amendment number 3, printed in Part C of House Report number 115-235, offered by Mr. Grijalva of Arizona.
Pursuant to House Resolution 454, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, and a member opposed will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and acknowledging that I'm running the risk of being uppity on this particular amendment, but thankfully never smug. I rise in support of my amendment to H.R. 218, the King Cove Land Exchange Act. My amendment simply requires the state of Alaska to repay $20 million appropriated in 1999 to support the town of King Cove before the bill can take effect. The American taxpayer has already provided the town of King Cove with a total of $37.5 million to improve transportation, access, and medical facilities in the area. That included $20 million to build a road, construct a dock, and purchase marine equipment. Part of this money was used to purchase a $9 million hovercraft. This federal funding was provided as an alternative to building a road through the Eisenbeck Wildlife Refuge. The hovercraft worked as it was designed. It carried up to 49 passengers at a time, an ambulance, and even cargo, making the trip between King Cove and Cove Bay in 20 minutes, a trip that will take 2 hours on the proposed road when it is not shut down by extreme weather conditions. After operating for 3 years and performing at least 30 medical evacuations, the local government stopped using the hovercraft. The Evolution East Borough is now trying to sell the hovercraft on open market for $5 million. As we speak, House Republicans are seeking massive and dangerous cuts to spending on things like education, assistance to working families, and Medicaid and Medicare. Before we mandate the construction of a road through congressionally designated wilderness, it's only fair that American taxpayers are reimbursed for the federal funding that was intended to avoid the construction required by this legislation. Mr. Speaker, I urge adoption of my amendment and reserve my time.
The gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alaska?
Rise in opposition.
The gentleman is recognized.
This amendment, and it would penalize the state of Alaska for a Clinton administration decision by making them pay back grant money for the costly and often unreliable emergency hovercraft system. Residents of King Cove never wanted this system and only agreed to the compromise when it became clear the Clinton administration wouldn't oppose any effort to authorize the construction of this life-saving road. After years of working in good faith to make the solution work, King Cove had to abandon the system due to exorbitant cost and, frankly, mechanical failures on the craft, and very expensive to run. And very frankly, this amendment is an attempt to reparation, but it targets the wrong group. The amendment puts the price tag on the safety of King Cove residents who have sought reliable access to medical care for decades. Congress does not require Louisiana to pay the federal government by the failed levees in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina before building new ones, and should not be wrongly charged the residents of King Cove for constructing this road. And by the way, furthermore, the amendment seeks repayment from the state of Alaska, who did not receive money. However, the grant monies for temporary emergency relief efforts were largely awarded to the local governments. Again, I think this amendment is a punitive amendment, and I urge my colleagues to vote against the amendment. And I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me remind the point of the amendment that the money, the $37.5 million, and also the decision by the local residents to purchase the hovercraft that was not mandated by the federal government, was their decision, again with federal money, $9 million. And so that was all in lieu of construction of the road. This legislation mandates the construction of that road, and I think it's only fair to the taxpayers that if the purpose was in lieu of to deal with the medical evacuation situations that we've heard about here again today, then the American taxpayer should be reimbursed for that. This was not an error caused by, as the levees in New Orleans, by faulty design and construction that bore responsibility to the federal government. These were local decisions made on the use of that money. Now that the use of that money is moot, then the taxpayers deserve to be reimbursed, and I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Alaska is recognized.
I just reserve at this time, or you reserve?
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I urge support of my amendment. I yield back the remainder of our time.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman from Alaska is recognized.
Chairman of the committee, Mr. Bishop.
Gentleman from Utah is recognized.
As we close on this particular amendment, let me say I would never consider this amendment uppity. I would consider it cute and a gotcha amendment, because the reality is, unlike what has been alluded to, is the community did not want this hovercraft. They wanted what was promised them in the bill, which was an 11-mile road to connect to the rest of the road. It was forced upon them by the Clinton administration that said, this is it, take it or leave it. And they tried to make it work. Bottom line is, the system didn't work. What the Clinton administration here, 6,000 miles away, forced on the local residents who knew they would have a problem, did not work. And they quit doing it simply because they could not afford to maintain that hovercraft. The hovercraft has not been is for sale, but no one needs a hovercraft. And that's why this community now is stuck with the decision that we made 6,000 miles away because we know what is right for King Cove, Alaska, instead of allowing them to have some kind of control over their own lives. What Mr. Young said is accurate. When the levees broke along the Mississippi, the Missouri, we didn't go to those states to insist on it. When there are wildfires that take place in the West, including the gentleman from Arizona's home state, we don't go back to Arizona and force them to pay for all of it. This is simply an amendment that is cute, and it's a gotcha amendment. But it's also wrong. And it was also pointed out, the grants went to the community. The community is not being required under this amendment to pay it back. It's the state, which simply means the amendment is also poorly written if it ever was indeed supposed to be a sincere amendment. This is one of those things that we don't need to go through. The options are very clear. We've gone through the process. Vote against this particular amendment. I yield back whatever time is remaining, obviously, to Mr.
Yes
Young.
on the bill and no on the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, on that, I would ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
I will move the committee rise.
Question is on the motion that the committee rise. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the committee rises.